For more than 100 centuries, the Emperor has sat immobile on the golden throne of Earth. He is the master of mankind. By the might of his inexhaustible armies, a million worlds stand against the dark. Yet, he is a rotting carcass. The carrion lord of the Imperium held in life by marvels from the dark age of technology and the thousand souls sacrificed each day so his may continue to burn bright. To be a man in such times is to be amongst untold billions. It is to live in the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable. It is to suffer an eternity of carnage and slaughter. It is to have cries of anguish and sorrow, drowned by the thirsting laughter of dark gods. This is a dark and terrible era, where you will find little comfort or hope. Forget the power of technology and science. Forget the promise of progress and advancement. Forget any notion of common humanity or compassion. There is no peace amongst the stars. From the grim darkness of the future, there is only war. Hello everyone, and welcome to Hard Mode, where we play through games on the hardest difficulty. Today we're playing Warhammer 40K, Space Marine. With a sequel coming out in a couple months, I figure it's about time I finally play through this game. Released in 2011, this game focuses on the Ultramarines chapter as they help repel an orc attack on the Forge world Gaia. To those of you who aren't familiar with Warhammer, I'm sure that sounded like gibberish. We'd be here forever if I explained everything in detail, so I'd recommend looking up videos by people like Bricky if you want to deep dive on anything. I will give brief explanations to help keep everyone on the same page. Space Marine is considered one of the best Warhammer games to be released. Let's find out if that's true. The game starts off with a briefing of the Orc invasion. They're attacking the planet Gaia, which is the Forge world. The Forge world is a planet that's dedicated to making weapons for the Emperor's armies. We also learn this planet has a non-expendable Warlord-class Titan on it. It's like a giant mech. The higher-ups have decided that losing this planet isn't an option. The only group that they can call that would make it in a reasonable time is our squad. The Ultramarines, the strongest and most honored soldiers in the Imperium of Man. We play as Captain Titus, and learn the orcs have massacred the forces defending Gaia. Even worse, they took the planet's defense systems and started shooting down our ship. We quickly learn that Titus is a badass. He decides the best course of action to reach the ground is jetpacking down while knocking out a goblin ship. We're accompanied by two allies, Sergeant Sidonis and Rookie Leandros. Leandros does not agree with the jetpacking since it isn't in the Codex Astartes. The Codex is essentially a bunch of rules for the Space Marines. This shows us how Leandros still has a stick up his ass and is a rule follower. Sidonis is more excited to give the orcs a very stern talking to. We skydive down and land on an orc ship. Our tutorial starts here. Our main weapons are a melee weapon and a bolt pistol. Essentially the pistol and knife combo of this game. We are also able to execute enemies to regain our health. We cut through orcs while learning about their basic infantry. There's the small melee fodder, the big melee fodder, and then orcs with guns. We kill until the boss of this orc invasion shows himself, Boss Grimskull. He insults us and sends more orcs after us. After killing them all, we rotate the orc gun and it destroys the ship's bridge. The ship goes down and we casually get off the ship. We hear from Sidonis that he was shot off course and there's no word from Leandros. We decide to meet up further down the road. So this game is essentially a corridor game. You walk down one path with the occasional small path that leads to a collectible. The collectibles give you more lore about the universe, so not really worth picking up, honestly. We trudge forward, killing all orcs in our path. We run into a support pod that gives us a bolter, an assault rifle. We fight through the rubble and run into Leandros. We help him with his orc situation and he chastises us for using the jetpacks and leaping into enemy fire. We tell him to stop blindly following the Codex and think for himself. We head out and run into allied forces. They tell us about their lieutenant, who has helped them stay alive as long as they have. We head through a tunnel and see all the wounded men here. On the other side is Sidonis wiping out orcs. He joins us and we open up another supply pod. This one has a chain sword to replace our knife. The chain sword's animations and executions remind me of Gears of War, which was pretty popular when this game came out. We move through more trenches and run into a new enemy. It's a squig with explosives attached to him. While threatening at first glance, they end up being our most useful ally. Shooting them explodes, taking out all enemies near them. We fend off a horde with more regular soldiers. Post-horde, we're led into the base of operations here. We meet Lieutenant Mira, who's in command. She tells us about how the orcs have taken over the gun fortress and shoot down any support vessels. We make our way over to the guns, not before using another supply pod. This one gives us Fury mode. The Fury meter fills up when fighting and is activatable when full. In Fury mode, we constantly regain health, and melee attacks do increase damage. As we head through the trenches, a couple Orc Digga, which is the name of their vehicle, come through and we test out Fury mode. Eventually we run into another supply pod. This one gives us the Stalker Bolter. It's a sniper rifle version of the Bolter. We spot the gun fortress in the distance and start killing our way there. After much slaughter, we run into another supply pod. This one has a jump pack. The jump pack allows us to fly into the air and slam down onto the ground. This also adds more verticality to some sections. The downside is our ranged weapons get limited to the bolt pistol and the bolter. This fun lasts until we reach a rock. A rock is a spaceship used by the orcs. We head through into the gun fortress. Here we find a supply pod. We get a vengeance launcher. This shoots out magnetized fusion charges that we can stick to enemies and walls. We then explode the fusion charges. We explode our way to the armory where we find melted charges. We decide to place one of these on the shells being fired. This will cause the whole fortress to explode. We take a lift down to where the shells get loaded in. We place the charges on a shell and push it into place. Just in case, we decide to follow the shell. We just want to make sure nothing bad happens. We take the lift back up and start making our way through the facility. We find another lift that takes us up. We find another supply pod that gives us the Purity Seal. This lets us slow down time in Fury mode to get cleaner shots off. I didn't really use this at all. We find our shell taken out of the chain. Leandros pushes the bomb while we protect him from the horde. With the shell in place, we run for the exit as the fortress explodes. With the gun fortress taken out, allied supplies can touch down helping the militia. It's time to head for our main objective, securing the Warlord class Titan. We make our way into a nearby train station and see the orc using one as a battering ram. What's alarming about this is the tracks go right to where the Titan is stored. We rush forward and jump onto the ram. We fight our way to the other end while wiping out all orcs. We end up getting attacked by an orc ship. We use a nearby turret gun to shoot it down. We do manage to shoot it down into the ram, causing it to crash. We nonchalantly walk out of the crash and keep heading towards where the Titan is. On the way, we find a servo skull near dead allies. Servo skulls are little robots that have a wide array of uses like scouting, librarium, and medical assistance. This one is trying to find a live ally to give a message to. The message is from Inquisitor Drogon. He's hidden away after protecting an experimental device that enemy orcs are after. In 40K, the Inquisitors are secret police and intelligence agents. We then see the orcs trying to use a crane to break into where the Titan is stored. We head up to stop them and run into a new enemy type. It's a giant orc that serves as more of a mini-boss. We then use the crane to destroy an orc ship that's nearby. Now we head for the Inquisitor. We get word from nearby guardsmen and ask them about meeting up with the Inquisitor. They tell us to head to a nearby lift to meet up. We reach the lift and find another supply pod. This one has a power axe in it to replace our chainsword. I think the power axe is supposed to be better, but they both felt about similar. Before they send the lift up, a horde of orcs comes. Titus tells the guardsmen to hold off on raising the lift till all orcs are dealt with. We fend off a couple of hordes and some big orcs. With all orcs slaughtered, the lift arrives and the guardsmen tell us the Inquisitor is in the Manufactorum. The Manufactorum is where military vehicles are made. We make our way into the Manufactorum. The first thing we run into is the Titan and see it's perfectly untouched. We then head for Inquisitor Drogon. We fight through orcs that came in through the pipeline until we meet Drogon. He reveals the device here's a power source. It's unstable to the point that if the orcs got it and start messing with it, the planet will explode. Drogon starts leading us to the generator room. We end up running into Grimskull, who also wants the power source. We also run into another supply pod with the plasma pistol in it. It's basically an upgrade for our bolt pistol. We arrive in the generator room, and while Drogon decouples the power source, we head down to grab it. Naturally, it's never that easy, and Grimskull with his goons arrive. We fend them off until the power source is collectible. Upon grabbing it, the power source explodes. Titus wakes up amid rubble and grabs the power source. We talk to Sidonis, who tells us Drogon was convinced we were dead. We set up a rendezvous location and make our way there. We head through the sewers, killing orcs as we go. We run into another supply pod. This one has the Melto gun. Functionally, it's the shotgun for this game. It can replace the weapon in slot 3 or 4. We test out the weapon and take a lift up. At the top is another supply drop. This one gives us Superior Fury. All it does is make the Fury meter drain slower. We test it out on more orcs before reuniting with our allies. Drogon isn't with them, so we head out to find him. We show them our cool new toys and find a way to the surface. We find yet another supply pod. This one gives us the las cannon. It fires a laser and conveniently a new orc enemy walks by. These orcs have rocket launchers and are perfect target practice for our new gun. We fight forward and end up running into Drogon. He's baffled that Titus is alive. He explains the power source uses raw energy from the Warp. The Warp is a psychic parallel dimension the Chaos Gods fight one another in. The Imperium uses it for faster-than-light travel. The Warp is mainly seen as a place where demons reside, and thus is considered heresy. Drogon also says that the power source fuels an experimental weapon he's been making that could destroy the Orcs. Our game plan is to go use the weapon and defeat the Orc army. Where the weapon is held is far away, so we head over to ask Mira for one of her Valkyries. Valkyries are just ships. We fight forward until Drogon's wound slows down too much. Titus tells the others to get to the Valkyrie while we distract the Orcs. We walk 5 feet and find another supply pod. This one has another jump pack along with a new melee weapon, the Thunder Hammer. It functioned like Thor's Stormbringer. We move out and show the Orcs what time it is. Hammer time. We fight and circle our way around the guardsman's base while using up all the fuel in the jump pack. We meet up with Mira and board the Valkyrie. Here we get a little turret section shooting down Orc jetpacks. Midway through this section, an Orc ship arrives and flanks us behind us. We rip off the turret gun and shoot the ship down. As it goes down, an Orc jetpacker flies into one of our propellers, taking our ship down. We hop off onto a bridge and start fighting forward. We reach the other side of the bridge and Mira picks us up in her Valkyrie. She drops us off near the research facility that holds the weapon. We fight through what looks like a canyon until we reach the research facility's front door. While the door works on opening, we deal with an oncoming horde. Once the door opens, we run through it and it shuts behind us. Drogon explains how they took the ground to space transport and made it into a firing tower. Naturally, this place is swarming with Orcs, so we rip and tear. We head through a pipe that leads to the basement of the facility. Drogon warns us that the servo turrets are still operational. Normally, that's great, except the turrets are set to kill anything that moves in their range. We wipe out turrets along our path to the central security. We reach Drogon's laboratory and he turns off the turrets. Unfortunately, it's only the turrets we already destroyed. All further turrets are still on and want us to die. As we head back out, we see tons of test subjects in pods. We say our disgust towards it until Drogon says the magical words. The Emperor approves. That makes everything okay. We run into another supply pod. This one gives us the Kraken Bolter. It's the upgraded standard bolter. We move along to the core of the security center. Here we find another supply pod that gives us Supreme Fury. It lets us gain Fury at a faster rate. Drogon turns off all turrets, which will end up leading to tons of Orcs being able to come in. He has to do this to also let us fire the weapon. We reach the power core of the tower and place the energy source. Nothing's ever easy for us, and we need to manually restart the array alignment in the firing chamber. We board a lift there. Mid-ride, Drogon lets us know that this problem is from the Orcs sabotaging the gun. Luckily, fixing it is just pushing a piece back in. We go for the main control panel and fire the weapon. Grimskull arrives to take the power source. Before he can, a big shockwave happens and the warp opens, revealing demons! They leap onto Grimskull and they fall off a nearby edge. A Chaos Space Marine walks through the portal as Drogon ascends to our platform on a lift. The Chaos Marine holds us in place as Drogon bows. Drogon reveals that the Chaos Marine is named Lord Nemeroth. Nemeroth kills Drogon and reveals that all of this has been part of his plan. Titus crawls forward to grab the power source and Nemeroth tries freezing him again. Nemeroth is surprised that Titus has a resistance to his abilities and the warp. Suddenly, Grimskull climbs back onto the platform and clashes with Nemeroth. They both end up falling over the ledge. With Nemeroth away, our allies are no longer frozen. We head for the exit of the facility while demons spawn in and attack us. We also see the Orcs and demons fighting each other. You can either kill them all or just let the two fight. We eventually leave the facility after culling the horde of demons. The portal to the warp is slowly getting bigger, and once it gets big enough, Nemeroth's invasion fleet will come through. Naturally, we don't want that, so we decide to use the Titan to close the portal. We start heading back to the Manufactorum. Nearby is another supply pod that gives us the Iron Halo. It buffs our shield. More Orcs and Chaos Demons fight, but these we have to kill. The Orcs are clearly losing and the demons start turning their attention to us. Here we get a good view of the new faction we're dealing with. The regular demons are the melee infantry and the normal Chaos Marines are the ranged infantry. We move on and Leandros starts getting sus of us. Only those familiar with the warp can resist its touch. Only the people in league with Chaos can become familiar with the warp. Leandros believes us to be traitors. Sidonus and Titus tell Leandros to stop worrying and that we'll find out the answers after stopping the invasion. We kill more Chaos Warriors and hear from Mira. She lets us know she deployed units along the way to the rail network to help us. We backtrack through the areas until we rendezvous with Mira. The 4 of us keep moving and find another supply pod. This one gives us the plasma gun. It's the upgrade to the shotgun. We reach an Imperial Guard outpost just in time for an Orc horde to arrive. We fend them off and head for the central outpost that is also under attack. We also learn the Orcs turned off the generator that powers the turrets. We fight to the generator and turn it back on, restoring the turrets and clearing the remaining Orcs. So far, this generator section was the hardest. The Grenadiers had a good beam on any spot I could hide in, while melee infantry charged me behind cover. We start moving toward the Manufactorum until suddenly we're grabbed by Grimskull. He wants our power source and wants to kill us for it. We 1v1 until he starts losing. He then immediately opens a wall letting in adds. Luckily he's no match for Fury mode, right-click spam, and a little plasma hits. With Grimskull dead, we have officially defeated the Orc invasion. All that's left is the Chaos Legion. We head up a lift and are reunited with our fellow Marines. We ride the rail cart to the Manufactorum. We fight our way until we run into a tainted Psyker, the worst enemy of the game. Psykers are humans with psychic abilities due to the warp. Their connection to the warp makes most people not trust them. Nemroth is a Psyker, which is why he has magical abilities. What makes the tainted Psykers so troublesome is their high health and laser ability that destroys your health. We reach the Titan's main control and turn it on. The last thing we have to do is release its mooring clamps. We fight to the clamps and run into another enemy type. It's a Chaos Marine with a giant hammer. It's the Chaos Army equivalent to the big melee mini-boss. We walk backwards while shooting him until he dies. We tell Sidonis and Leandros to get the big doors open for the Titan while we head up to the clamps. We take a lift up and run into the last supply pod. This one has a Storm Bolter. It's a double-barreled bolt gun that has a high fire rate with a terrible accuracy. Literally only good if I'm being ran at or surrounded. We open the clamps and run to board the Titan. Before we can, the Chaos Forces reveal another enemy. The Chaos Drones, or Blight Drones if you play the tabletop version. They're just aerial gunners, so cover gets rough with them. They're also pretty tanky. We jump onto the Titan and Psykers add a couple deaths to the death counter. My health bar! My health bar! My health bar! We leap to a lower section on the Titan and plug in the power source. The Titan fires and the warp gate closes. We meet up with our allies and move to deal with Nemeroth and his forces. We learn that ally ships are nearing the planet, but Titus decides that the power source is only in trusted hands once it reaches someone closer to the Emperor. Mira sends a Valkyrie to pick us up. We trust Sidonis with the power source, while Leandros and Titus go to kill Nemeroth. I know I just threw a ton of info at you, but our Ultramarines kinda stood around and talked about this, so not much to break it up with. Don't worry, more Chaos Marines arrive and start firing at us. This section also killed me a ton. With just Chaos Forces left, the game is turned into cover-based shooting. They also throw grenades to get you out of cover. After taking them out, we head towards the landing pad to wait for the Valkyrie. We see Sidonis take out a couple of Chaos Men here. It's going well for him until a portal appears behind him and Nemeroth pops out. Unfortunately for Sidonis, he doesn't react in time and is impaled. What's even worse is he has the power source on him, which Nemeroth promptly takes. Titus runs up and Nemeroth stuns him. Nemeroth monologues at us before complimenting us on our resistance. He then teleports away. Here comes the toughest section in the game. Tons of regular enemies spawn with 3 Psykers. The 3 of them together will instantly drain my health if given the chance. Meanwhile, I'm also getting shot at and grenades are being thrown at me. Once enough enemies are dead, they send in the melee mini-bosses to draw us out of cover. After about 12 deaths and roughly 30 minutes of trying, I finally managed to get past this section. Valkyrie arrives, dropping Mira off. Titus tells everyone that Nemeroth plans to use the power source to turn himself into a demon prince. We plan to kill him during the transformation since he'll be most vulnerable. We also plan to do this alone. Leandros protests but acquiesces. We take a lift down and gear up for the last couple sections. We fight forward and see regular enemies horrifyingly transform into demon spawns. Luckily by now, friendlies have started making their way to the planet. One such is the Thunderhawk ships. We get word from one of the Thunderhawk ships that wants to help. We tell him to come grab us nearby. We also run into one of my favorite Space Marine chapters, the Blood Ravens. We fight forward through the forces of chaos. We reach the edge of the bridge and tell the Blood Ravens to hold the line here. Our Thunderhawk arrives and we take it closer where Nemeroth is. We leap off and tell the Thunderhawk to support our other allies. Luckily, we found a jetpack and hammer in the Thunderhawk, so we take them with us to slam down on all enemies. Hunt down Nemeroth. Alright. Not that way, at least. We don't hunt down Nemeroth that way. After much ground pounding, we run out of fuel and drop the jetpack. We keep killing until we reach Nemeroth. He's busy chanting to his gods and we tell him not to worry. We'll send him to them personally. He attempts to seduce us to his ways, but him and his forces aren't really our type. He sends waves of ads at us and we die a couple times. The edge of this game shows in moments like these where the autosave is before the cutscene, and there's no way to skip the cutscene. I didn't really mention it before because it's honestly only really prominent here. This whole time Nemeroth is busy chanting away behind his force field. Once all waves are dead, Nemeroth transforms and turns to fight us. We run up and tackle him off the platform and start our boss fight. We skydive while shooting him until we reach him. We then mash whatever button is on the screen and chainsword or punch the shit out of him. We do this a couple times until we grasp Nemeroth's head in between our hands and squeeze his head into a pulp. With that, the chaos threat here is done. We grab the power source and hold it tight as we see the Thunderhawk flying towards us. We wake in the back of the Thunderhawk with Mira in front of us. Also in front of us, another Thunderhawk lands with the Inquisition exiting. Leandros walks up and starts snitching on us to the lead Inquisitor. We defend that we are no heretic, but Leandros says we lie. The lead Inquisitor places us under arrest and will take us and see if we have been corrupted by chaos. If they find us corrupted, they will assume everyone that also fought with us has been corrupted and sentence them to death. We decide to come with him to prove we are innocent and learn why we can resist chaos without falling to it. Before we leave, we tell Leandros that the Codex Astarte he follows so closely is only a set of rules. Those rules that shape Ultramarines and tell them to hold honor and duty above all else. How Space Marine lives with those rules is the true test. Leandros has failed this test. I paraphrase the speech, but it's a really good closing for Titus as a character. We board the Thunderhawk and the game ends. By the end of the campaign, I died a total of 84 times. Woo! Sub 100! Minus a couple sections, this game was smooth sailing. 84 deaths isn't too bad, and that's not me coping. Early on, death doesn't really happen, as every enemy is melee. Once the Chaos Warriors come in, the game becomes way more of a cover shooter. That leads me to one of my biggest problems with the game, actually. The Chaos Warriors are really boring compared to the Orcs. Well, I guess everyone is boring when compared to the Orcs, but you really feel it in game form. There's only 2 melee units and both are rare to come by. Otherwise, it's going against tons of enemies with guns. I get that using the Chaos Warriors let them remodel the Guardsmen and Marines, but it made the game way more boring. I had a blast rushing at 40 Orcs that were rushing back at me. With the Chaos Warriors, it was sit by and cover and fire until they died. A significant drop-off in fun. Now, I love the Chaos faction. Death Guard is the army I decided to use in the miniature game. I just don't think it works as well in a third-person action game. I also wasn't a big fan of the levels. Quarter levels are great when you want to get through the game in one sitting like I did. Outside of that though, it's a big shame. The Warhammer worlds are great and exploring one would be awesome. There's tons of unique or creative set pieces you can pull, but they didn't. On a more positive note, the story is great. The voice acting is great and the characters are well written. You have to have a by-the-books character in 40k, but I'm glad there's only one. Titus and Sidonis are seasoned enough to think for themselves and make some badass decisions. There's plenty of interesting bits, like why Titus is able to handle the warp, or why the Emperor would even allow the technology that Drogon was working on. I can't wait to see the answers they give us for the next game. I also think the developers did a great job at making the game approachable. Warhammer 40k can be a big, complex world if given to new faces poorly. Speaking of, I hope the explanations I gave help make it feel less like hearing word salad. Space Marine is definitely one of the best Warhammer games period. This includes 40k and Age of Sigmar. Though in the 40k universe, I'd put Darktide above it. The game's kind of a mess, but I love the gameplay loop. Despite being one of the best Warhammer games, I'd put it at average for regular games. It's a fun hack and slash, but personally doesn't really do anything special or out there. Now, I know risks don't equal a better game, but personally I respect trying something weird and new, whether it works out or not. Space Marine plays it pretty safe. I give this game a B. It's good and does what it does well, but it could be more. I can't wait to see what they do with Space Marine 2. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you next time on Hard Mode.